Hello everyone, Omerko here, self-taught web developer. I saw this article a few months ago where this project was actually showcased to me. The project is simple enough, it is just a simple question of are you dumb? And there are two options, yes and no, and whenever we actually click on the no option, the button for no option will change its position, so you wouldn't be even able to click on it. That way you are actually forced to always go to yes option. And when there is yes option, you will just be prompted with this kind of confirmation text. So the project itself quite intrigued me, to be honest, and it is really nice showcase where you as a developer can build something like this for your own portfolio, as it will show a bit of HTML and basics of CSS skills and just a bit of JavaScript that is enough for the, I guess, junior portfolio project. So this is exactly what we will do in this tutorial right now. We will build this project that you see on a screen and we will do that from scratch. And before we start with that, be sure to actually subscribe to my YouTube channel, as that will help a channel a lot. And from that on, you can always expect new content from me because I'm actually publishing the content every week. Now to start with this, well, we need HTML, CSS and JavaScript code. So I will actually create all of those files right now. So in my Visual Studio Code, I will create index.html file. Then I will create styles.css. And finally, I will create app.js file. So this way, we have all three files that are necessary for such a project. Well, first of all, in my HTML, I will use HTML and Emmet plugin will pre-populate the whole HTML dummy content for me. And let's change the title of it, Are You Dumb? And that's it. Now, because we have this HTML and also CSS and JavaScript, let's actually import those files into the HTML. So here I will use link and I will link my styles.css file to this HTML. And at the bottom of my body, I will use script tag with the source, and the source will lead me to actually app.js file. So all of those files are now, well, those are coexisting together in this index HTML. Also for this tutorial, I will use a specific font. So you can visit this fonts.google.com website and here search for Anton if you wish your font to look like mine. So I will just select this Anton, and we can actually go at the bottom here and select the Anton font right here. So because I selected it, I will be able to see it right here. Yep. And we can copy the link for this font now. This way we are importing the font to our, well, project, and we can also copy it for the CSS. And in my styles.css, I will actually target my body, and inside I will pass font family. Well, I can just paste this, which is font family of Anton, because we will use this specific font for this project. Now let's start working with the HTML. So you saw the project earlier, we have that wrapper, and inside we have a question and also two buttons. So let's create first of all a div, which will hold a class of wrapper, and inside of here we will have, well, I will specify one section that will be called question. Well, it will hold a class of question, and inside I will pass h1, which will ask the question, are you dumb? So next to this h1, still in this question section, and I will show you why I have a specific section for this a bit later. So still here, I will create another section called answers. So why this section? Well, inside of this div, we will have our two buttons. So for example, I can have a button, which will be a type of a button. Then it can hold a class of btn for easier targeting in JavaScript and also CSS. And it can hold the ID for yes, for example. So this button is yes button, so it should hold yes text as well. Let's grab the entire button, paste it below. Type can stay a button, class can stay a btn, ID will now be no, and the text for a button will be no as well. Now, why do we have this question section? Well, after this question section, I will create another one, which is called confirmation. Basically, when we click on this yes button, we should show some kind of confirmation text. But I won't now create that confirmation section because, well, that confirmation section should be hidden by default. So I will create it a bit later when I also have a bit of CSS and JavaScript, so I could hide that section and show it only when the button is actually clicked. But right now on my screen, I don't have much. Let me zoom in. I just have my title and yes and no button, nothing else. So that means that we can move ourselves into the CSS. Let's make sure that we style this, well, our content a bit. So here, I will use star sign. For you who don't know, star, when we use it in a CSS, will actually grab all of the content on HTML. So each element that we have. I will put margin to be 0 for all of the elements. Then I will put padding to be 0 as well to reset that. And that's pretty much it. What we can also do is pass this content here, well, the styling for the font family. Sometimes body won't always style the titles or the button text to have this particular font family. But talking about this body, next to this font family, I will put background color to be DC, well, DFC3EF, which is a bit purple pinkish color. Now, there is also a nice way to center our content on a screen, and we can do that with this display of grid. And because we use grid now, this is CSS grid in CSS that we can use, we can also use place items, which will grab all of the items on our screen. And in our example, we do have this wrapper, so it will grab the wrapper and we can move it into a center, which will put that wrapper in a center horizontally and vertically as well. But for it to do that, it must also know the height of the screen. So I could put the height here, and if I would specify the height to be 300 pixels, then the page will be 300 pixels. But as I wish my height of the screen to be as long as my screen is, I can use 100 view height, which is basically the entire viewport, whatever we can see on our browser. Now, after this body, we can focus on styling our wrapper. So right after the body, I will target my wrapper, and for this wrapper, I will display this now as flex. So next to CSS grid, we will use a bit of flexbox styling as well. Now, because I'm displaying this as flex, I can use something called flex direction, and I can specify the column here. With this flex direction, we can specify how do we wish to align our content, by the column or by the row. So next to this column, we can also align our items to center, and I will also use justify content to center. That way we have all of the items inside of the wrapper, inside of center, which is basically this question and the content inside that we have. So next to this styling, I will specify the hard-coded height for this wrapper to be 400 pixels and the width can be 800 pixels. You can use your own height and width here, it doesn't even matter. Everything will be in the center because we are using this CSS grid and flexbox as well. Now, I wish to style this wrapper a bit and I will add the box shadow to this wrapper. I will add 0 pixels, 0 pixels, 10 pixels, 0 pixels, and then I will pass the color for the shadow, which will be RGBA. So this accepts value in RGB, so 0, 0, 0 for black, and then we can use 0.5 for the opacity. Next to that, I will set here position to be relative. Now, why relative? Well, because we will click on this no button, that no button will float around this wrapper. So we need to specify the relative position so the no button doesn't go outside of this wrapper. And one last thing, I will use color to be FFF, so we can have white text inside. Oh yeah, I also forgot to add the background color. I will add the background color of 001E33. Now, let's move away from this wrapper and let's style our title, which is H1. So I'll target my wrapper again, H1, and for the H1, we can just make the font size a bit larger, like 30 pixels is good enough, and I will add a bit of letter spacing, like 2 pixels, nothing else. Now from here, we will move to style our buttons. So to do that, I will grab my wrapper and then answers section that we have, which is wrapping our buttons here, as you can see. So this answers section, well, first of all, as I wish to have my buttons one next to each other. And to do that, the best way is to use CSS grid or flexbox. Let's go with the flexbox here. By the way, by default, those will be one next to each other, but we need to have a spacing between those as well. And moving those to their own respectful side, well, that part would be the easiest to do with the flexbox. So display here as flex. Now, align items in center. Then justify content will be space between, which will create that space between our buttons. And I will just add a bit of margin on the top to be 20 pixels, so we can move our buttons away from our title at the top. Now let's target each of our buttons that we have. So here, wrapper, then answers, and by the class I will target all of my buttons. Well, both of those. I will put a bit of padding, like 10 pixels top and bottom, 16 pixels left and right. Then we can use background color to be 7F77D0, which is a purple. Then border, by default the buttons will have border on them, so I will just remove it, so border will be set to none. Next to that, I will change the color to be FFF, so we can see the text inside, and cursor will be pointer. Well, at this moment, let's also create our confirmation section as well. To do that, right after my questions here, I will create the div with the confirmation class on it, and inside of here I will just add h2 tag, which will say yes, you are, and that's it. Now let's style this confirmation. To do that part, I will just target my confirmation, and I will set display as a none, and also target confirmation and h2 inside, and I will set font size to be, let's say, 80 pixels. That's it. Now, this is what we have on our screen. We do have our wrapper, this dark blue background, our title, and two of our buttons. Those are clickable, but we don't have functionality behind those. So let's actually work with that JavaScript now and add that functionality part. So how will we work now with our JavaScript? Well, first of all, we must get all of our elements that we will use. For example, our buttons that should be clickable, our confirmation section that should show some content. Well, also we will get our wrapper and the question as well, because we must calculate how much we need to move our no button. And as we don't wish to move our no button away from our wrapper, we will actually need to get this wrapper inside of JavaScript to calculate its own height and width. So inside of my JavaScript, I will use const of wrapper, and I will set it equal to document.querySelector, and I will select my class of wrapper. This way, we are selecting the wrapper from our HTML, and we have access to it inside of our JavaScript. Now let's copy this, like 4 more times, 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's change all of these. Next to wrapper, I will get the question, which is this section here, and I will get that by the question class. Now we will have also yes and no buttons, so here yes btn, and I will get that by yes class. Well, it's not the class, but the ID actually, so we must use hash here instead of dot, because you know that we have ID of yes and ID of no. So here, let's now grab no button, which is no btn, and I will grab that by ID of no. And last thing is our confirmation, which I will get by the class of confirmation as well. This way we do have all of our elements inside of our JavaScript. Now when we click on this yes or no button, we need to do something. So here I will use yes btn, and I will use add event listener on it. So I will listen for a click event, so when we click on our button, and once that happens, I will run a specific method. So I could create methods right here, but I will, well, separate those, which will make this code easier to read. I also suggest you to do that as well. If someone reads this code from you, it should be better that the code is well formatted and clean coded, so it is much easier to read. So here I will run a method called yesAnswer method, and we must create that method. So above here I will create const of yesAnswer method, which will be equal to a method, and it is the arrow function. So when we click on this yes, what I wish to do is actually, well, the best thing to do is hide this question and show this confirmation, because we are confirming that we are dumb. So to do that, here I will grab my question, because I can do that because I have it in my JavaScript. So question, and on it I can use style attribute. This style attribute will grant me access to all of the CSS styling that we can have. And that means that I can use display, and I can set it to be none. So this means that we will hide this question section. Now let's show our confirmation section. To do that, use confirmation style.display, and I will set it equal to block. And that's pretty much it. Let's immediately test this now. So we do have our question, and if we click on this yes, here it is. Our functionality for this yes button is in place, and it obviously works. Now let's work on this no button, which will hold a bit more functionality to it. So here, no btn, add event listener, and then we will listen for a click event, and once that happens, we will add the method that will be called no answer method. Let's create such a method. After my yes answer method, I will create const of no answer method. I will set it equal to be a function, and it will be an arrow function. So first of all, when we click on this no button, we should make its position to be absolute, which means that the button can float around. So no btn, then style on it, and then position will be set to equal absolute. Now that we change the position of our button, we can do more with it. For example, we can move our button, well, by the x-axis or epsilon axis, so vertically and horizontally as well. And to do such a thing, we need to calculate that, and we will calculate by this wrapper its own width and height. So how and where should we move our button? Well, the button should be moved randomly. So for example, if I click on this button, it should move it, for example, here, or here, or here, here, here. And the best way to do that is to use the random method from a math object that we have access in JavaScript. So here, after I set my no button, the position of no button to absolute, I will create const of x position, and we can calculate that position by x-axis. So I will set it equal to math.random. So we are using this random, which will give us the random number, and I will use times our wrapper, and on this wrapper we have client width, which is right here. So now we will get the random number, and we will get the client width, and we will combine those two together. But this random number will actually give us number, you can see here, between 0 and 1, which can be 0 point something something something, which is not good in our example, because we don't wish to move our no button just by millimeters. So what we can do actually is grab this, cut it out, and use math.floor, which will make, well, round our number here. So the client width can go from 0 to, let's say, 70, 150, 400 pixels. Now we will do the same thing for epsilon width as well. So here I will use epsilon position as a const. Math floor is the right way to go, math random is the right way to go, but this time, instead of client width, we will target client height, which is still the height of our wrapper. This way we are making sure that we are inside of the boundaries of our wrapper. So the only thing that we need to do now is actually change the position of our no button. And to do that, right here what I can do is grab my no button and set the style and set the left position. Because we are using absolute here, we can also target the left attribute and just style it as we wish, move it as we wish. And as we need to move it programmatically, we will do that here. So let's just pass here our X position. Also here no btn dot style dot top, we will pass epsilon position. Let's see what do we have for now. So if I click on no, this will just move the position over our yes, and we cannot go anywhere from there. So the wrong thing here that we didn't do is actually we just pass the numbers here, but we must also pass the pixel here. So what I will do, I will use backticks here and bind my X position and use pixel at the end. Let me grab that down below for the epsilon position with pixel. Now with that we can click on our no button and it is changing its position. But at some point you can see that button is kinda still in the wrapper, but it is also outside of the wrapper. Which means that we must go much deeper into this calculation and make sure that the button doesn't go away from this wrapper here. You can also leave it as you wish, but I will do that part as well. This means that we cannot just pass this X or epsilon position to left and top. It must be much better. So first of all here what I will do, let's calculate the left value here. So I will grab my X position and I will check if the X position is bigger or equal to my wrapper dot client width. Next to that I will also check if it's equal or bigger when we divide our client width with 2. This will make sure that our X position never goes away from the wrapper client width. So if this is true, what I will do, I will pass the value here, so backticks, and inside of here we can bind our X position, so to be minus the no button dot client width. Which means that if the button is going just tiny bit over the wrapper, then it will remove that client width of a button, which is exactly the value that we need to stay inside of the wrapper. Don't forget to add the pixel at the end. But otherwise, if that is not the case, then here we can just pass our, let me again use the backticks, and here we can just pass our X position. Don't forget to use pixel at the end. So because now we have this here, we can just grab this whole thing and paste it below. But this time, instead of X position, we will use epsilon position, and we will check if it's equal or bigger than client height, not client width. If that is the case, we will use epsilon position minus no button dot client height, and that's pretty much it. Also here, don't forget to use epsilon position instead of that X position. That's pretty much it now. Now we should be having this whole project finished. If I click on no, it will just go, well, change its position obviously, right? And that's pretty much it. It is staying in the boundaries of the wrapper, so we are also forced to click on this yes button, and if I click on this yes button, there it is. So with this you have a nice small project for your own portfolio. Make sure to use it and make sure to showcase it somewhere. As a final word of this video, I truly wish to thank you for following along and coding along with me. Now before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe as I publish new content weekly. Thank you all once again, and I will see you in one of my next videos. Bye bye.